What's up, guys? Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. I've got an idea. Let's take all of the degeneracy of normal Bitcoin mining, which is already a pretty speculative game, and let's combine that with the speculation that comes with NFTs and other merge mine sidechains and L2s. Let's wrap it all up into one kind of convoluted, semi-well executed idea, and let's mine some Bitcoin. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit about the various schemes that are going on, blending Bitcoin mining with ordinals, NFTs, other merge mine sidechains. This is a really interesting kind of crossing of the streams happening right now, where Bitcoin mining used to be kind of over here in the world of Bitcoin, and now it's proliferated across this new kind of Bitcoin user. I think this is really fascinating. It's driving a lot of economic activity, both on ordinals and then now in like the Bitcoin mining landscape. But first of all, yeah, welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. I'm Charlie. Bitcoin Season 2 is produced by Blockspace Media. We cover new topics and new faces on Bitcoin. We focus on ordinals, inscriptions, runes, I guess Bitcoin Fi now, other Bitcoin layers, and of course, Bitcoin tech, because that's actually where my heart is. So yeah, we're going to talk about mining, but first we like to do the metrics and just kind of review where we're at. The short version is we are down. Shit is down. Just first of all, the mempool is down. Just to tell you how down it is, the current transaction fees to get into a block are in the like 4 to 8 sat per vbyte range, which is actually up from what it was this morning. I saw it like mempool, I think Merch tweeted that we were clearing at 2.5 sats per vbyte, which is a low. We saw an interesting BRC20 1 sat per vbyte consolidation transaction event, which actually cleared a bunch of blocks worth of transactions which had been sitting there waiting to get mined for a long time, months. So we are seeing that if there's not a whole lot of activity happening on Bitcoin L1. Okay, we've been here before. This is actually still up 400 to 500% from where we were in 2022. But again, Bitcoin saw an all-time high this past year, and still not a lot of new transaction activity besides your standard like DCA type activity. In fact, just for context, here's a Runes dashboard on Genie data. In the past 24 hours, 63% of all transactions on Bitcoin were Runes transactions. Now, I've talked about uncommon goods, that infinite mint rune that Casey made, and we wrote a newsletter on the relationship between uncommon goods and Bitcoin fees, which is an interesting phenomenon happening right now. But yeah, the majority of transactions right now are runes on Bitcoin, and runes are down bad enough that I'm not even going to tell you what the actual market cap is. It's below $1 billion though. Getting into ordinal stuff, the number of inscriptions remains about flat. We're doing about 50,000, between 20 and 40,000 inscriptions a day. The average for the month is about 30,000. It's like not a lot, but I will say though, in retrospect, we were wondering if very early on if inscriptions would ever hit 10,000 in cumulative, and here we are doing 30,000 a day. Now most of those are BRC20s, but still, pretty crazy. Let's go to the market. So this is Domo's marketplace dashboard. We can see that volume on marketplaces is still, I use the word anemic, and it's even declining. So for context, between Magistat, OKX, Unisat, Magic Eden, Gamma, and Ordinals Wallet, we're looking at a total of, I think, under $1 million of marketplace volume for these inscriptions, ordinals on Bitcoin. The percentage share of volume by marketplace, this chart's a week old, but again, is pretty much entirely dominated by Magic Eden, with 90+% of all volume, which is crazy to see. I actually wonder if this dashboard is right, but I think it is. And then we have unique users by marketplace cumulative. We have an estimated 800,000 unique users. Having dived into the data a bit and gotten some primary feedback on some of the sources from these, I think that number is much lower. It's probably under 500,000, but that's still significant user base, but it's declining. And also just going on to one of my favorite runes visualizers on ord.io, showing kind of like each block as showing how many runes are in each one, and we can see that sometimes that the blocks occasionally will have the majority of transactions in there will be runes. Like just 45 minutes ago, 5,000 mint transactions were in a single block. So let's talk Bitcoin mining. So I'm going to try to make this a linear thought process. I mean, if you're not already subscribed, hit up the other Blockspace media content. We have like the premier content and podcast on mining, the Mining Pod, and then our mining newsletter, which goes out Fridays or Thursdays. Highly recommend. If you just want kind of more like, I would say, B2B focused mining research. But let's talk about B2C mining. That is the world of Ordinals enjoyers. So this has resurrected with ZK's piece on the BitAxes. Let's start on I think this is a more positive, edifying piece where ZK of the Ordinal Maxi Biz creator talks about proposes a revolution of home mining, which is economically irrational, which has as its goal decentralization of the Bitcoin mining network. This is a very noble goal. He writes a very compelling piece. Run your home miners, point them to a pool which is either independent or lottery mine. These are interesting ideas, pretty compelling. I've seen a lot of spaces spin up and talk about this, and it has resulted in a net increase, I think, in BitAxes sales. We'll see how this trend continues. If you want more back and forth discourse on this specific topic, I would recommend going to the Bitcoin Season 2 Writers Room that Colin and I recorded 2 weeks ago, because we kind of pull this apart, do some pros and cons, and really dive into this topic of pleb mining. What I think the takeaway is that we're seeing a new wave of pleb miners and pleb mining movement happen, but it's kind of led by this Ordinals camp, particularly ZK and OMB folks. So it's very cool to see, very interesting to watch this happen. But then Fractal launches. So Fractal is a merge mined sidechain with Bitcoin from the Unisat team. If you don't know who Unisat is, it's the big Ordinals marketplace out of China. And I did, I think, the only on-camera interview with the inventor of Fractal Bitcoin and head of Unisat, Lorenzo, a couple weeks ago. Check out that episode. So Fractal launches last night, Sunday evening. You'll get a lot of you'll get a lot of takes, because it's not it wasn't really super well documented until recently. But it's a fork of Bitcoin Core where you have a merge mined Bitcoin block with a couple fractal only mined blocks. They call this cadence mining. This targets out to be a block every 30 seconds, advertises a Bitcoin scaling and expressivity increase. I'm just a fly on the wall watching this. This is a very interesting thing happening, because there's not really an established price for the own token Fractal Bitcoin yet. There are some OTC trades. I think I saw $20 to $40 maybe trading for 1 FB is the ticker. We'll have to see how this evolves. But Fractal Bitcoin launched last night. A little bit of a stutter out of the gate, in that after 2 blocks, the main Fractal node which the Explorer on Unisat's website references, broke or something because it was expecting a certain pattern of blocks and then didn't happen, so they had to hot fix it. But anyway, it's back on track, and we're currently at about block height 3,500. At the outset, these blocks are coming in not at 30 seconds per block, but more like 5 to 10 seconds per block. This was happening incredibly quickly, which means that if you were mining Fractal, you were getting way more FB tokens than expected because blocks are getting confirmed so fast. The number of miners who are competing against you was well below the target network difficulty rate for the 30 seconds per Bitcoin or 30 seconds per block. This would be kind of like if maybe like half the hash rate on the normal Bitcoin network dropped off and there were only half as many people mining, so that they would have less competition, they get more Bitcoin. In this case, there's not yet, as far as I'm aware, an established trading price of Fractals, so remains to be seen. I tweeted something on this, which I'd probably like to clarify, where I was talking about blocks are coming in fast. Clearly, the meta is if you want to get Fractal Bitcoin that you would want to actually mine it, the best place to do that is to rent hash rate, which we'll get into. And then I think I was wrong about the difficulty adjustment block number of blocks. I think it's not 200,000. I think it might be more close to 2,000. I'm actually not entirely sure about this. I have not actually gotten to dig into the source code and confirm this with other more technical people than me, but I believe the difficulty retarget is actually supposed to be about a day. So however many blocks in Fractal would be in a day, I think, is the difficulty retarget. So just looking at this, it appears that Fractal blocks are coming in about every 30 seconds now as targeted. So I assume they've had a difficulty retarget. I don't know. I'm actually really curious why this is the case, because certainly more people are mining Fractal. In fact, we're seeing a total of that is that right? 179 exahash mining Fractal, with 49 of it coming from Antpool. This is a lot. That's way higher than I expected it to be. Okay, so I'll have to verify that. That's interesting. So we have here merged. Yeah, there's no way this could be right. Okay. Anyway, I'll have to check. I'll have to dive into this. After I get off this podcast, I'm gonna go check some details and write a newsletter on like the Fractal mining ecosystem and mechanics. So that said, everybody knew that, like, okay, we want some Fractal Bitcoin. I'm saying by everybody, I mean the degens. They want the Fractal Bitcoin. So there's various ways to get that. The first one would be we take some of the proven metas in the pre-runes ecosystem, that of ARSIC, or the runes mining inscription, which is basically a futures note on future delivered runes. We do that. We copy paste that. We do FSIC, which is just fractal mining. It's an inscription that you buy that they say will deliver to you like a hash rate equivalent of mined Fractal Bitcoin. We'll see if this works. This caused the FSIC inscription price to pump, and I think it's down now after they have after at least the initial launch. FSIC does not seem to be like mining a bunch of Fractal Bitcoin. Again, it's really hard to stay on top of all this. Then we also saw the hashlings, which are kind of like, I would say, the like poster child for normal ordinals mining note, where you buy an inscription and you own it, and you can elect to get mining rewards for it, which relates to a real physical deployment of mining rigs somewhere out there. So you're actually mining. You do have like interest or investment in a mining operation in some capacity. So Hashling's been doing that, but then Hashling's then said, we're going to do the Fractal Bitcoin mining thing as well. If you go to the website, this kind of sums it up. For their normal Bitcoin mining operation, they've mined about 17 Bitcoin to date, but they are, as they say, going to start fractal mining, that is mining just fractal Bitcoin, on the 19th with easy mining. I think they're a pretty reputable mining company based in the US. So we'll see how that goes. Then we have what I think has been the best play, at least so far at the launch, is just renting hash rate on the open market. If you're not familiar, so you can build a Bitcoin mine and you can operate that Bitcoin mine. This is an entire business model. This is how most Bitcoin miners operate. Or you can go to some of these marketplaces online and you can rent hash rate. So you pay some Bitcoin or a stable, and you will get hash rate delivered and pointed to a pool of your choice. This, I think, makes a lot of sense, or made a lot of sense at the outset for Fractal, because you could rent hash rate on a third-party website like NiceHash or Mining Rig Rentals and point that to a pool that mines Fractal. So you're not like beholden to build and operate a whole site. It's just you pay and you get hash rate pointed for a percentage, particular window of time. This guy Mush, I think, had one of the best threads on exactly how you do this. Fairpool is Unisat's pool to mine Fractal through. There's some notable people, LIFO and Wizards of Ord, who kind of like helped a lot of people. Or they're kind of like nailing this meta, and one of the people like best communicating how to do it. So Much kind of breaks down like, here's how you rent the hash rate, blah blah blah. Here's how you point it. But what I think is interesting here, and I'm going to write about this in the newsletter here for tomorrow morning, is this. This is Mining Rig Rentals, I believe, is a no KYC hash rate marketplace, and we can see here the historical price for 7-day for price per terahash per day as of, I believe, yesterday, Sunday noon, was 6 leading zeros, 80. I think that's about 80,000 satoshis per day. It might be 8,000. Regardless, it's maybe 80,000 satoshis per day to cost to rent. No, that's got to be 80 sats per day. 80 sats per day to rent a terahash of this mining. And if we look at the current price of this marketplace, we are now up. Well, it was up a little bit earlier. We're at, I believe, 100,000 sats. We went from 8,000 to 100,000. I think. Let me make sure. Yeah, 80 sats to 10,000 sats. I need to check these numbers, but it's like a very significant increase. So it's at least a multiple of 1. It might be a multiple of like 10. And my math is, I should have checked my math before I went on here, but it's up. So this is a crazy interesting effect that the Fractal launch and play to rent hash rate on these third-party marketplaces and then point that to a pool that mines Fractal is having an interesting secondary effect on these hash rate marketplaces. This is against the backdrop of the Bitcoin hash price only being up like 5%. So we're actually seeing a dislocation in the value of hash rate on rental marketplaces versus in the actual physical deployment landscape. This might be a small blip, might be a small deviation, but it is very interesting kind of from the Blockspace angle of, we look at mining, we look at new Bitcoin degen stuff, and we like to identify, I in particular like to identify phenomenons happening in the mining space which are affected by ordinals, merge mining, Bitcoin tech, degen stuff. So this is a very interesting thing to watch. All that said is make sure to subscribe to the newsletter tomorrow morning. Comes out Tuesday morning, and I'll probably evaluate this. I'll actually figure out and track down the exact numbers on some of these things and do a little write-up on how the Fractal launch has affected this little microcosm of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So super interesting to follow this. Again, this is not financial advice. I don't want to tell you to buy anything, but it's clearly right now has captured the attention of the Degen group. The last thing which is happening in Fractal, just the next event, is that BRC20s will launch on Fractal. By BRC20s launching, I mean Unisat will start recognizing BRC20s inscribed on Fractal chain at block height 21,000. We're currently at block height. We're currently at block height 3,597. So 3,597 happened in a pretty quick amount of time. We're back on normal block, like the 30-second block cadence. It looks like it could be at this rate now up to 6 days, I think, until the BRC20 Fractal Vision launches. BRC20s were like the fee driver event of last year in 2023. So interesting to see if this may drive fees on Fractal. We will see. Regardless, lots of interesting things happening in various mempools across various Bitcoin abstractions. So I'll be paying attention to this. Obviously, if you want to learn more about just the overall Bitcoin mining ecosystem, check out other Blockspace media products. And without further ado, just next week, we have Inscribing Singapore and Ordinals Summit. I'll be in Singapore next week, speaking at this conference, which is Inscribing Nashville and Inscribing Amsterdam, but in Singapore. So Ordzar is spearheading this event. I'm particularly pretty excited for this event. Lots of stuff going on in Token 2049 next week in Singapore. Shout out to Nakib and the Ordzar team for executing this. I will see you all there. I'll be conducting some interviews. Would love to see you if you are in Asia and making it down to Singapore next week. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening to Bitcoin Season 2, produced by Blockspace Media. Check out the Gwart Show, Mining Pod newsletter, and the Friday Bitcoin Writers Room episode. Otherwise, see you later.